Welcome back to our innovation stage brought to you by M12. If you'd like to learn more about M12, you can check out their virtual booth. I'm excited to introduce our next speaker, John Whaley, who is the CEO and founder of UnifyID. Please join me in welcoming John to our virtual stage.
Great, thanks everyone. Yeah, thanks for that awesome intro. So, it's great to be here, and let me share my screen quickly. Perfect. So yeah, so today we're going to talk to you about motion-based behavioral biometrics and something called implicit authentication. Implicit authentication is something where you can authenticate based on just your natural behavior. You don't have to make any explicit action. You can just be yourself, and there's enough that's unique about you that you can actually be authenticated. But just to take a quick step back about what are the basics of authentication, where there's really three different categories of authentication. One is our knowledge-based factors. This is something that you know. It could be like a password or your social security number, mother's maiden name, things like that. Second is a possession factor. That's something that you have, and that could be a phone, a YubiKey, or like these, something like that. And then the last is a biometric factor. That's something that you are. That's could be your fingerprint, your face, or in this case, your unique behavior. And traditionally, at least on the technology side, most of authentication were knowledge-based factors, things like passwords. And knowledge-based factors have a number of downsides, especially that have become very evident more recently, especially, and so in a knowledge-based factor, the notion is that you're using some private data to validate your identity. It could be anything from your mother's maiden name or social security number. It could be a password that you've set up with the service. And the problem is that those are increasingly not private. In this era of the data breach, like it's not a question of if your data will get out, it's a question of when. It's also very susceptible to things like social engineering or man in the middle, or even just basic research, looking up, okay, what city do you grow up in and things like that. So we've seen more and more businesses moving away from knowledge-based authentication and supplementing it with additional forms of authentication. Another area is around biometrics, and the biometrics, most biometrics today have a number of issues as well. Number one is that often biometrics are not always private. If you think about things like your face, Apple used to say, your face is your password. Your face is not your password. Your face is actually more like your username. It's something that you project to the whole world and say, this is who I am. And it's not really private, and so because it's not private, it's very easy to steal. Biometrics are also often easy to hack. You have this trade-off between user acceptance, where I want to, I'm a legitimate user and want to get in, and also attacker rejection. That's a very difficult, with many biometric systems, to make them very usable, they often make them very permissive. And so, one example of that is this problem of on fingerprints, something called master prints, that because the sensors on these devices are very small, they're only matching a tiny part of your fingerprint. And because of that, you can generate synthetic fingerprints that will actually unlock a vast majority of devices. So these are like the master keys, but in fingerprint form. And if you just present these fingerprints to different devices, you can unlock 77% of all devices. So in terms of having targeted attacks, these type of biometric systems can be easy to hack, and they can also be biased against certain groups, in terms of skin tone and other things. And it's not just a data problem. The problem is much more pernicious in terms of going all the way down to the algorithm level. So these kinds of problems are not very easy to solve on the biometric side. And so fundamentally, the problem is that authentication is not actually a technology problem. It's more of a human problem. Authentication, the problem of authentication, it predates technology. Even since prehistoric times, everyone in any type of social society would have to know what is like whether somebody is who they say they are, or are they part of my group or not. And we all have very precise neural networks that have evolved over millions of years to do exactly this. And and the type of factors we typically use are things like what does a person look like? What is their face? Listen to their voice, their possessions, the context under which you see them, even things like the way they move and things like that. And and to be able to identify, is this the right person or is this look like somebody else? And there's something weird going on here. And now in our case, these neural networks are biological, that they've evolved over many generations. But as it turns out, it's possible to train neural networks to do much the same thing using similar type of data. And so that's what we do, and that's the type of problem that we work on. Look at what makes each person unique, and then using that for authentication purposes. And so the thing that makes us different is we're actually the first authentication platform that can actually authenticate users with a high level of accuracy without requiring any conscious user action. You can just be yourself, and there's enough that's unique about you that we can actually authenticate you. And I think the best way to show that is via a demo. So, I mean, if you notice, I've had my phone in my hand this entire time. And, and so our product, we make an SDK. You can link into any iOS or Android app. And you can see, but I have this integrated into the banking app here. And one of the worst authentication experiences is when you have to dial into a call center. Where they ask you, mother's maiden name or social security number, or they'll ask you other type of identifying information. And, and sometimes you may even know the answer, like when's the last time you made a transaction? So, it's a very negative experience. Let me show you what the experience is when you've integrated our SDK. So I'm going to click to dial into the call center.
Hello, John. Thank you for calling in from a known phone. One question. How can we help you today?
So how did that work? Well, on the back end of the IVR system, we know not only the fact that this call is coming from this device, but who is the person who's holding this device. Based on the fact I walked into this room, I've been holding the phone, I haven't put the phone down, and so therefore then the phone knows that I am the correct person, and then the IVR system knows that this is coming from this phone, and then bridging those together, we're able to provide a much more seamless authentication experience. And so this is not just for call centers. This also spans to many things in physical world, like doors, cars, ATMs, brick and mortar stores, and computers as well, like logging into to computers and websites. So and so we have a suite of products. Some of them are around and APIs. Some are around streamlining authentication, providing that passive authentication mechanism, and some are around fraud detection and prevention, including the ability to generate unique signatures based on users' behavior and their environment, and they'd be able to detect things like account sign-up fraud or account takeover. And the use cases span from everything from passwordless authentication or replacement for a 2FA or MFA, replacing those type of SMS like codes that you get, like we have to type in a 6-digit number, as well as a number of use cases around fraud detection, account takeover prevention, etc. And there's a lot of technology that goes behind this. The key behind this is actually machine learning, and we've built what we believe is the largest known data set of human motion and mobile user behavior going across over 34 million devices, over 117 countries. And it's not so much about the volume of data, it's more about the diversity of data that we have. And this is really key to be able to get high real world accuracy. So the accuracy of our system is on par with a physical fingerprint. So about a 1 in 50,000 false positive rate, based on a person's unique behavior and motion. So this actually allows you to get a very highly accurate authentication result without the user having to do anything different. There are no silver bullets in security or authentication. There's, but there's a number of ways that this type of motion-based authentication compares favorably to other forms of biometrics. Yeah, I mean, one good example is one of our customers. They use a QR code, payment system, and currently, with more and more people wearing masks, of course, they have challenges where they can't use facial recognition. And so, by using our passive auth capability, we already know it's a correct user even before they've interacted with the service, even before they take out their phone to scan the QR code. We already know that it's them based on their unique behavior. And so there's a lot of science behind it, which I'm not going to be able to have time to get into. But there's, like we use a combination of signal processing techniques as well as machine learning techniques. And just a little bit more about the company. We were founded in 2016. So we've been around for about 5 years. We've run a number of accolades, including at TechCrunch Disrupt, RSA Innovation Sandbox, and most recently in 2020, we were named the overall fraud prevention solution of the year. So, and we have a number of great customers, both on the financial services side, as well as as marketplace companies, ride-sharing companies, and food delivery and others. Anyone who has a mobile app who cares about user experience but also cares about security, then that fits our customer profile well. And so anyway, I think we're out of time, but I'd love for anyone who's interested to follow up. I'm on Twitter at Joe Whaley, or just you can email me at john@unify.id.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John. If you could go ahead and, perfect. Let's give you a big virtual round of applause. All right, it's time for you to make your way to your next session. On the way, you can also take a look at our sponsor booths or do some virtual networking. Thanks so much, and we'll see you around.